Alright guys, it's Julian Grimm again, and nobody puts baby in the corner. Last time I left you, we were doing a punk rock demo using only Ableton plugins and Ableton sounds. And it sounded like this.
So far away, I'm moving on and I don't want you here.
And now I spent some of my precious time on it, and it sounds like this.
So far away, I'm moving on and I don't want you here. So far away, I'm moving on and I don't want you here. So far away, I'm moving on and I don't want you here. So far away.
So as you can see my screen, everything's much more color-coded and organized now. But still, if you open things up, everything's still a mess, because that's just how my life is. As you can see, you can group things in Ableton by selecting two tracks and pressing Command G. And what's cool about that is that you can treat them as one thing, basically like putting them through the same bus in processing only that bus. So the guitar, I didn't mess around much in here. I only changed the mic maybe or something like that, but I didn't mess with stuff in here too much. All that I did is I grouped both guitars and I mixed them as a bus. And as you can see, I just put a little bit of EQ in there to make them more present. And I use Saturator. Saturator is a very cool plugin in Ableton that saturates things, obviously. And Ableton has a bunch of cool distortion plugins. They have Saturator, they have Overdrive, they have Pedal now, they have Erosion, I think. So many cool stuff. But for guitars that are already distorted, Saturator was good. And the only reason why I put Saturator in there is because I didn't use an amp. And when you use amp, everything vibrates in the room the amp is, because you turn it up really loud. So the cab vibrates, the head vibrates, the room vibrates, the floor vibrates, the mic vibrates. So because I didn't use a real amp, and to make things a little bit more chaotic, I put a saturator in there just to make it more messy, you know? A little bit more dirty. So here's without the saturator. And that was with. You see, it makes them a little bit more present as well, which I like. The bass is basically the same idea. I didn't need to group the bass because it's just one track, but I use a channel EQ. Channel EQ is a new plugin in Ableton 10, and it's cool because it's very simple, but I think it sounds a little bit better than EQ 8. I don't know why. It sounds a little bit smoother, and it's good for like just giving things a little bit more lift or a little bit more low. It's cool. Bass, as always, you have to compress a lot. And the cool thing about Ableton, and that's my favorite thing about Ableton actually, is audio effect racks. Basically, it's a way that you can parallel process things in Ableton without having to create multiple tracks. You make this rack here, and you can have parallel chains. And I always have the raw chain, which is just the raw sound, no changes there. And I put a parallel chain. In this case is the pedal. The pedal's giving the bass a little bit of distortion and giving you a little bit of a boost in the trebles here. Man, I love the effect rack. It's so nice. It's such a nice rack, if you know what I mean. I'm getting kinky again, and it's fine because you like it and so do I. So here's the bass without the effect rack. And here's with. And you see, I just have that chaotic, distorted bass sound right in the background again, because again, I didn't use an amp and I need a little bit more chaos, because this is punk rock, you know, you need a little bit more dirtiness in there. And I forgot to talk about the drums. Oh my god, the drums are so important. So I'm here another day, another outfit, another everything, and I'm gonna talk about the drums and just slide it in that video as if nothing happened. So just pretend I'm wearing the same, nothing happened. Just watch the video, okay? Come with me. Let's look at the drums. For the kick, usually I use this plugin we have in Ableton called the drum bus. The drum bus is quite a cool plugin because when you're using electronic drums, you can add drive to your drums, compression, a little bit of crunch, and even sub-frequencies under your kick. Sub-frequencies are really low frequencies that hug the listener and tell them, hey, do you wanna come to my room? No? Okay. But anyways, I use this in punk rock very lightly. So you can see I'm in the kick pad right here in my drum rack, and inside it I put the drum bus, and I add a little bit of drive and a little bit of crunch just to make the kick a little bit more punchy. And I add a little bit of boom, because you can't have loads of boom and sub frequencies in punk rock because there's so many kicks. that you're gonna make things messy. So the kicks have to be quite sharp and full of attack. They can't have a long tail, massive low frequencies, but it's still nice to have a little bit there. Most people will use like a sub mic to record the drums. You know, it's like a speaker, but it has reversed cables on it, so it captures audio instead of playing audio. We didn't have that because we just used the drums in Ableton, so we can add a little bit with this plugin. It's very subtle though, so I'll try and show it to you guys by soloing the kick. So here's the kick without the plugin. And here's the kick with the plugin. As you can hear, it's a little bit more punchy, but what I want you guys to know is that if I solo the boom here, I have this really quietly under my kick, just to give a little bit more of a low end to my song. And as you can see, I'm mixing it very, very lightly, just 21%, because I don't want to make things messy now. Maybe later. As for the rest of the drums, I didn't want to spend ages mixing each channel, because luckily these patches in Ableton come pre-mixed, and it's good enough for this demo. So what I did next to make the drums sound a little bit more lively was to process them as one in their main channel. So let me show you what I've done. I used an audio effect rack, of course, and in here I have the raw chain, always just the plain sound of the drums, so this is how that sounds. I have a compression here, which is a parallel compression, so it's quite strong. I'm mixing it lower in the mix. I use it to make the drums a little bit more aggressive, roomy, and just make them glue a bit more together and make them sound a little bit more like real drums. Heavy parallel compression is always great to make the drums sound a little bit more real if they're like sample drums. So here's how that sounds. So I use the glue compressor because I think that's supposed to be an emulation of an SSL compressor that was very much used in drums, so it seemed obvious to me to use this one for drums. I got a distortion chain as well. Distortion is great on punk rock drums because you can give more attack to the drums, but it still is a smoother attack because it's distorted. It's a simulation of analog distortion, so it makes the peaks a little bit smoother, just like my butt. And yeah, so then I also have an EQ8 just to cut the low ends because I don't want the low end to be distorted. That can get messy, so cut that a little bit out. And I lowered the highs a little bit as well just because cymbals distorted can be annoying, so I try to make that a bit smoother here. And the last one is just a room reverb. I used the Max for Live convolution reverb, and it's very cool because it has a bunch of real reverb sounds in there that you can use. And as you can see, I chose a drum booth, a real drum booth reverb that's recorded in this convolution reverb. I mixed it in just to make, again, the drums sound a little bit more real, like they're in a real space. Like all the pieces are in one room playing together at the same time. So here's how that sounds. Sounds like a room. And that is it. So here's how the drums sound with no audio effect rack. And here's with the audio effect rack. And with the vocals again, I grouped them. So the very cool thing about the groups as well is that this is meant to be one track of vocals, but I couldn't sing all at once because I couldn't breathe in between the lines because I'm such a great songwriter. But with Ableton groups, I can work on them as if they are just one track. So I grouped them and I processed them. As you see, vocals are just so easy, man. Punk rock vocals, you can't get too complicated. You know, it's just some EQ, cut lows, turn highs a bit more up. With the audio effect rack, again, my best friend. Always you need a raw in there because you know you gotta raw dog it, man, sometimes. But you also need a little bit of squeeze. So this is a compressor just going nuts on the vocals.
So far away, I'm moving on
and it's just turned down really low. It's just in the background, giving a little bit more string to the vocals. Saturation, as always, and this time I cut the lows of the saturation because I didn't want all the dirtiness from the lower part of my voice saturated. I just wanted the top end saturated. But again, saturation also mixed in quite low. Delay, because what's cool about Ableton is you can have delay on an aux track. It's fine, you can do it, Pro Tools man. But you can also have it in the audio rack, and it's up to you. You can use it the traditional way, or you can have it in the audio effect rack. And the cool thing about having it in the rack is that when you turn down the volume of your track, the delay comes down with it. You can process the whole thing as one, maybe compress the whole thing as one, as I did here, and glue the delay to the vocal, and it's just a cool thing. And the last thing that I have is flanger, because one thing that Ableton doesn't have is a doubler or a widener. Like usually I use microshift from Sound Toys, but because I can't use that today, because I'm using only Ableton plugins, I put the flanger in there, and it's the same idea. It just makes it wider and cooler. And in the end of everything, I just put a glue compressor to glue all this crap together and make the vocals a little bit more compressed, because you need compressed vocals when you're doing rock music. It's just effect. Rock and pop. So here's the vocal without the audio effect rack.
So far away, so far away.
And here's with.
So far away, so far away.
It's a very small difference, but I like it. Don't you? Maybe you don't. I don't care, man. Everybody gotta like your own self. Another cool thing about audio effect racks, as you can see, I have the exact same chain here in my doubles. I just copied and pasted it. Easy. Nothing to see there. Backing vocals, didn't want to use the rack, so it's just a little bit of EQ. Make it thinner, make it a little bit different from the rest of the vocals, so they pop out a little bit more from the sides. And that's it. That's the mix. And finally, the master. I gotta be serious. It's hard to master only with Ableton plugins. Like if you want to do a professional mastering session, it's hard to do it only with Ableton products, because they don't have a visualizer. You have no idea how many LUFs are coming out, but you can still do it. It's fine. People did it in much more difficult situations in the past, so you can do it in Ableton. Again, channel EQ, smoother than the other EQ, nicer. Just a little bit of a smile curve in there. Glue compressor, because you need to glue shit when you're mastering, right? EQ8, cutting some lows, again, just to make sure. Boosting some of the M100 and not much else going on there. An audio effect rack, because why not? I put some squeeze in there, which I mistakenly wrote Acquies, and I think I'm gonna always call my squeeze chain now Acquies, because that just sounds something right out of Housewives of Atlanta. Like, hey Acquies, can you grab me a sandwich, please? That rhymed. Huh. But anyways, I like Acquies, so it's gonna stay Acquies, okay? And saturation. Of course, you can't oversaturate your whole mix, so always do it in parallel, man. No danger there. And in the end, a little bit more EQ, because I went and listened to some references, actually. It's nice to mention this. I listened to some references, like other songs, and I kind of gauged what was a little bit different, and I tried to match it a little bit with this final EQ. I messed around inside the mix as well and the other plugins, but I tried to match it with this EQ a little bit more as well. Finally, just the limiter. You can't really know how many loves are going out and shit, but you just gotta prevent shit from clipping, am I right? So limiter, make it as loud as you can without sounding horrible. And that is it. That is the mix. And this is the final demo of So Far Away. I hope you guys liked this video. If you liked it, please press all the buttons that help me, and I'll see you next time. And hopefully you will see me too. Here's the song.
Hey, do what you're doing with your life. Can see it deep inside your eyes. There's only sorrow